Afternoon, how are you? It is 66 degrees in Virginia today, and there's the slightest wind, and as you can see there's a lot of sunlight because it's late in the day, and so it's right in my eyes, both of which appear to be working. In fact, I was so full of energy today, I swam a mile this morning, and so I'm going to walk, 4 miles now. And in between I've been working on cases. But I do have some observations about the law. There are a lot of lawyers saying a lot of dumb things on the air. And let's talk about one of them right at the center of what Blackjack Smith is doing with his investigation. You know, he's calling upon a lawyer and he's able to ask him about his conversations with Trump, or at least that's the scenario that's being discussed on the air. And the question is, how could you do that? Well, when I was a young puppy prosecutor, there was a big narcotics case going on, and the defense attorney for one of the defendants in the case thought his client had approached or been approached by a juror, and he talked to him about it. Now, here's the thing. He told the court about what he observed, and the court got very uncomfortable about that juror and had that juror removed. Now, I wasn't involved in the case, which is why I was asked to investigate the jury tampering. I didn't for a moment think the former prosecutor, now a defense attorney, had done anything wrong. After all, he reported it. And I said to him that it was an ongoing crime, so it couldn't be privileged. And I thought that was pretty obvious. And at first he was willing to go before the grand jury and testify. And then he didn't want to. And then he wanted to be subpoenaed. Then he wanted to be held in contempt for not talking to test the issue in the Second Circuit. And so the case is David Doe. And it turned out there wasn't any case law on the subject back when I was having this argument. And this is the way the law came down. If I represent a person and they tell me they committed a crime yesterday and it's over, then that's privileged. If I'm talking to a person today and they tell me on a telephone, say, that they're at a bank in the middle of a robbery, that's not protected because it's an ongoing crime. And the privilege, the confidentiality to get advice, takes flight in the face of fraud or some criminal act. And that's how you, if you will, pierce the privilege, because it shouldn't exist and doesn't exist when your client is in the middle of committing a crime and telling you about it. Now, you can make this as complicated as you want, but I suppose if we're talking about Mar-a-Lago and the documents that weren't produced, if at some point Trump said, oh yeah, I have more documents, after saying that he had no more documents, well, that would be an ongoing crime and there'd be no protection for it. And you can make it as complicated or as simple as what the actual facts are. The catch-22 is, how do you get the facts if the only person who has them has the privilege? That is to say, the privilege runs to the client, Trump, and not to the lawyer, like most privileges. That is to say, it runs to the person the privilege is intended to protect, and in this case, to protect the confidentiality. But the rest of it is, everybody is so excited that somebody's asking these questions and doesn't get upset about the fact that nobody is indicted. And you know, when the dust settles, if they indict some underling or some lawyer or something, then you really have to scream foul and run and pull these people out of their houses and tell them you're fired. Don't go on the ballot. Don't ever apply for another job. You're wasting our time. In the category of, it's about time guys had to think about this, there's a birth control pill they're working on for guys. And you don't have to be too concerned because they're still only working it out on mice. But, you know, I think it might not be a bad idea that every man is entitled to 2 children, and then after that they have to tie their tubes. Now, the scream that comes up in response to that, if you were to say it really seriously, would be, oh, what about my dominion over myself? But it's okay that these guys would invade women. Here in Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, named after the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth, they, that's the reports anyhow, they say, well, there was a legislation proposed by Senator, and it was that a search warrant may not be used to get the menstrual data of young women. And our governor thinks it's just fine to have that information. Evil is in every direction, you know, and stupidity and gross abusive conduct toward people they claim to respect whom they are. And, you know, some people are saying, oh, technically, it's not a HIPAA violation. Really? How could it not be? How could it not be a violation of the patient-doctor privilege? Why isn't that confidential? It's nobody's business. Only person who has to have any interest in it is the young lady, and perhaps with her consent or parent or whatever. But what do they want to do? They want to track the bodily functions of women to see how many might be having an abortion or about to have an abortion. These people are sick puppies. Evil, I think. And then in the other category of strange and bad news, years ago, Holly and I went to Antarctica, and it's a mysterious place because when we were there, the colors are basically whites and grays, except for the most piercing blue that is the intense freezing and compression and the light going through that. And then the winds can be 70 miles an hour. And when we were on the ground at a research facility, we talked to some of the scientists, and they said the krill, which feed whales, was suffering. The quantity was suffering. And so that would affect the entire food chain for whales and other creatures. Well, now we're in a very different place. The glaciers that were so magnificent that floated by the ship that we were on, there are fewer of them. Now there's 737,000 glaciers, that acreage rather. And it's shrinking. Why? They're melting. Global warming. Not climate change, except in one direction, warming. And as a result of that, the seas will rise, our shores will be pushed back, the salt waters will come and compromise those land masses, and those people on the Outer Banks should think about moving now. And there are questions about what will happen to Manhattan and places in Florida and lots of other places. But our government doesn't want to do anything about it. It costs money to actually defend against it. Some think sandbags are enough. What do they know? Oh, and we talked about my governor, Youngkin, and his appetite to know what a woman's menstrual cycle is, and that he should be able to have search warrants to do it. It's interesting, the state Senate voted to protect people from such search warrants, 31-9. But our House, the lower chamber, is lower in more ways than one. They think, oh, you know, you should be able to do that. Finally, of the things going on, we have DeSantis down in Florida, and he thinks we should get rid of advanced placement courses. Now, the dumbing of America seems to correlate with the wrong-headed belief among Republicans that if you educate people, they'll be liberal. Well, they may be. But the schools I went to, the most open was Columbia. I never encountered a real university until I was there. And I have a lot of respect for Fordham. But the generation of students that I knew at Fordham were, Roman Catholic, and then often first generation, and it was more homogenous, if you will. Columbia, everybody from every place imaginable, every kind of background. Fascinating. So he doesn't want to have advanced placement. We don't want people thinking about history. We don't want advanced placement in English. We don't want advanced placement in what? Geography, science, name it. And I took all these courses myself, and I think they were very helpful in choosing what I wanted to do with life and what I had a facility to do. It's also interesting that DeSantis is against advanced placement when he's a guy who went to Yale and Harvard. You would think a person with that exposure would appreciate the value of such education in a lifetime of personal experience and professional work. But no, he doesn't think there should be advanced placement. There's people like this who have no business in government, have no business commending how we deal with things. And yet, that's who we have, that's what we suffer, that's what we're doing with. So, I am walking in this marvelous day, and I am enjoying the trees and everything around me. So until the next time, I'll talk to you. All the best. Bye-bye.